You may have seen my film on why I bought a 911 and why specifically a 996. If you haven't, I urge you to click the link above and you can take a look at my decision-making process and how I went about it. They certainly are the affordable 911 currently, and if my film encouraged you to dive in, I thought you might appreciate a guide to the whole 996 model range so you can see what might work for you. I've built a one-pager guide showing all the different models in the range, which I'll talk you through, and we'll look at them all and what the differences are, what the pros and cons are of each one, the jargon and what the rarities of the range are. And you'll quickly see that some 996s actually aren't affordable at all and are very rare indeed. So firstly to the basics, the Porsche 996 superseded the 993 and was launched in 1998. And they carried on building them until 2005, so despite what you may have heard, it is actually one of the most successful 911s of all time. They made just over 175,000 of them, which was more than any preceding models of 911. Of course, I don't know what you are looking for. Some people want comfort while others might want power, and yet others might want handling. The Porsche 996 range caters for all of them, and as we know, Porsche is the master of differentiating their main product to cater for all tastes, and the 996 was no different. It's bewildering actually, but it's one good reason why the 911 range has lasted for so long. There's one for every taste. I'll show you how it breaks down and which one could be right for you. So, the first cars were the Carrera with two-wheel drive, also known as the C2, and the Carrera 4, also known as the C4. They were produced between 1998 and 2001 and all had the 3.4-litre engine. In 2000, Porsche gave the cars a very minor increase in power, up from 296 bhp to 300. For the first 3 years of the model's life, your choice was limited to these two models, but of course you could have the choice of coupe or cabriolet, manual or automatic, and of course the myriad options that came with them at additional cost to get your car to your precise specification. The Carrera range is the everyday comfortable 911 and were the majority of cars sold during the run of the 996. They can now be found in all conditions ranging from 11 or 12,000 all the way up to $30,000 and above sometimes. Given the prices of their predecessors especially, and their successors, like me, when I bought mine, you'll think you stole it when you get one. As I mentioned before, in 2002 the whole range was facelifted, and these cars are most easily identified by their different headlights as shown here. The facelifted cars also had enlarged engines, now up to 3.6 litres, and with additional power up to 320 bhp. It also harkened the introduction of the new turbo model with its 3.6-litre Metzger engine, named after its designer Hans Metzger, and all-wheel drive. These engines do not have the issues or risks associated with the IMS bearing and are generally considered to be very hard-wearing and powerful. Standard output was 414 bhp, a healthy improvement over the Carrera, but you could also specify the larger intercoolers and turbo with the X50 option, which gave you an additional 30 bhp, taking it up to 444 bhp, a very fast car indeed. Important to note that the turbo had a 6cm or 2.5-inch wider body than the Carrera models, and this was also used to create the Carrera 4S model, which still had the M96 engine of the Carrera but the wider body of the turbo, all-wheel drive, and unique styling at the rear with the reflective strip between the rear lights. Aside from the turbo and GT models, this model is generally considered to be the one to go for, and is priced accordingly. You'll pay an increment of around $5,000 to $10,000 over the Carrera for one of these. The narrow-body Carrera 4 was discontinued in 2001, and the C4S replaced it. Staying with the turbo range though, a cabriolet model was added in 2004, and then for 1 year only in 2005 a Turbo S was added, which was in essence a renamed Turbo X50 model, pushing out an identical 444 bhp. So if you're looking for ultimate power with all-wheel drive but without sacrificing comfort, the turbo range is the one for you. Again, as the oldest one now is 18 years old, they're now available in various conditions, but expect to pay around $40,000 to $75,000 for a turbo and around $60,000 to $100,000 for the rarer Turbo S. But what if you're looking for a track-focused model? Porsche has you covered here in the 996 model range, but this is where it starts to get expensive. They're in much demand and not many were made. Before I talk you through the GT range of Porsches designed to do just that, you can, of course, track the Carrera models if you like. There's an abundance of vendors that will sell you the parts to make your Carrera model more track focused. The one I would ensure that I got if I were you is the Motorsports Air Oil Separator. The standard Carrera has an issue on long or sharp left-hand turns where the oil gets into the intake manifold through the standard AOS, air oil separator, and if you're not careful can hydrolock the engine. It's not a cheap modification at over $800 just for the parts, but it could just save you a new engine, and it will save you the cost of buying an expensive GT car. As you can see in one of my other films, which I will link in the pop-out above, Carreras are great fun on the track and very capable, even the ones with tiptronic gearboxes. But back to the GT range of 996s, despite producing a GT3 for the rest of the world since 1999, Porsche didn't bring them to the US until 2004. It was a stripped-out homologation version of the Carrera 4 narrow body, but using the stronger non-turbocharged Metzger engine. In case you don't know, homologation is the rule imposed on car manufacturers by racing regulators, who insist that in order to compete in certain classes of racing like GT3 and GT2, manufacturers first had to release versions of the cars for the road that consumers could buy, literally racing cars for the road. And when I say stripped out, I mean it. All sound deadening was removed, the rear seats, and even such niceties as air conditioning and the stereo, although these two could be optioned back in. Look to pay anywhere between $80,000 and $125,000 for these GT3 cars. The first non-US GT3 models put out 355 bhp, but rising to 381 bhp after the facelift in 2002. Other than the US and Canada, Porsche also produced a Rennsport or RS version of the GT3, which stripped it of weight even further using plastic for the rear window and even a sticker instead of a badge for the hood. As you can imagine, these are the rarest of the rare, and if you can find one, look to pay north of $175,000. They were all white, and owners had the choice of white with red decals or white with blue decals. Before we look at the final and most powerful model in the 996 range, let's spare some love for the Targa. This was the model that catered for people for whom a sunroof wasn't enough and for whom a convertible roof was too much. A niche product for sure, and only produced from 2002 to 2005. Very different to the original Targa and the one today with the roof hoop and the detachable or stowable hatch. This one has a large glass sunroof and a rear glass hatchback door, allowing better use of the rear space. Otherwise, engines and transmissions were the same as the Carrera models, and you can usually find a Targa towards the bottom of the Carrera price range these days. You pays your money and you takes your choice. The final model to cover is also the most powerful in the range, the GT2. Again, a homologation model stripped of all unnecessary weight, including its all-wheel drive system. This used the wide body and engine of the Turbo, but pushed the envelope even further than the X50 Turbo S to push out up to 476 horsepower, but in rear-wheel drive format only. A handful, one might say. Expect to pay between $100,000 and $150,000 for these if you're brave enough to drive one. They have a bit of a reputation in the wet for obvious reasons. So that completes our run-through of the 996 range, which I hope you found helpful. I encourage you to dive in. My 2003 Carrera 2 is simply fabulous, even in 2020, to the point I'm wondering if a turbo could be in my future. I'll add further links in the description below so you can read more about some of the models we've looked at today. And here is a guide showing the entire Porsche 996 family tree and all the models that we've looked at in this film today, and some that we haven't, being the Millennium Edition and the 40 Jahre Edition. It shows each engine that is used in each model, whether they are pre or post facelift, and which IMS bearing they use, whether they are D for dual or S for single. I hope you find this useful. And of course, feel free to pause the screen, screenshot the guide, and print it off. Alternatively, email me and I will send you a copy. Thanks very much indeed for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.